Today, we're going to dive right into the architecture of your own mind. We're going to talk about how to make that critical shift from being controlled by your thoughts to being the one who's actually in control. So, let me just ask you this straight up. Are you really in control of your thoughts? I mean, really? Or does it sometimes feel like your mind just has a mind of its own, dragging you along for the ride? Check out this idea from author Thomas M. Sterner. He says, most of us are not thinking, we are being thought. So what on earth does that mean? Well, think about that constant chatter in your head, that internal monologue. The point here is that it's not something you're consciously doing, it's something that's happening to you. You're more like a passive audience member just receiving these thoughts and emotions that are being generated by some deep-seated old programming. And this isn't just some philosophical musing. Look at that number. 95%. Neuroscience is telling us that a staggering 95% of your day, your actions, your decisions, your feelings, it's not being run by you, the conscious you. It's being run by subconscious programs. Basically, for almost all of your life, you're on autopilot. So, here's how we're going to break this down and reclaim that control. We'll start with the illusion of control, then get a really cool insight from a piano technician. After that, we'll look at mindfulness as a mechanical skill, talk about reprogramming our own awareness, and the power of detaching from outcomes. And it all leads to that final transformation, from puppet to gatekeeper. All right, let's jump into our first section, the illusion of control. See, before you can even think about taking back the controls, you first have to face a pretty stark reality. For most of your life, your mind's been flying the plane on its own. And to get this, we have to talk about a really crucial idea, the observer self. Think of it this way. The real you isn't that frantic voice worrying about a deadline or replaying a conversation. No, the real you is the one listening to that voice. It's the silent, steady consciousness in the background that just experiences all those thoughts. So how does this autopilot actually work? Well, it's a super simple and incredibly fast loop. Okay, step one, something happens. Let's say someone cuts you off in traffic. Bam, an external trigger. Step two, your subconscious mind goes racing through its files, looking for the program labeled cut off in traffic. And step three, it hits play. And out comes the automatic emotional reaction, that flash of anger, the frustration, and all of this happens before your conscious mind even has a chance to process what's going on. Okay, moving on to our second section, the piano technician insight. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. To figure out how to break that automatic loop, we're going to look at Thomas Sterner's really unique background. Believe it or not, his work as a concert piano technician was the perfect training ground for mastering the mind. I mean, just try to picture this. For 30 years, you're working pretty much in solitude. Your job? To tune and fix these massive concert pianos. A single piano has over 5,000 action parts, and each of its 88 keys needs 34 tiny, super precise adjustments that all affect each other. This wasn't just work, it was a masterclass in tedium, and that repetitive, high-stakes focus, it kind of forced him to develop an incredible level of present moment awareness. It was like an accidental Zen monastery. And that experience leads us right into our next big idea, looking at mindfulness as a purely mechanical skill. Yeah, let's just set aside all the spiritual or mystical stuff for a second and just see it for what it is, a skill. Something you can train, something systematic, just like learning to play the piano. And this right here is the heart of Sterner's whole philosophy. He calls it the practicing mind. And what it is a fundamental shift in your focus. It's about stopping the obsession with the finish line, with the goal, and instead learning to fall in love with the process itself, the journey of becoming. So why does this matter so much? Well, think about anything you've ever tried to get good at. Your job, a sport, playing an instrument. We spend something like 98% of our time in the process of getting there, right? In that messy middle part, practicing and learning. We spend hardly any time at all actually having the skill perfected. So if you can learn to enjoy the process, well, you've just figured out how to enjoy almost all of your life. Okay, so this is the big question, right? How do we take this awareness and actually use it to change our automatic programming? How do we get in there and rewrite the code? It all starts with a simple but powerful reframe. The next time you feel that surge of frustration or anxiety or anger, stop. That feeling is not a sign that you're failing. It's just a data point. It's neutral information. It's your internal dashboard flashing a light that says, "Alert, your current skill for handling this is maxed out." It's not a judgment, it's just data. Sterner tells this great story about a young, elite golfer who was just completely falling apart during a huge tournament. And he told her, "Look, you can't overcome this situation unless you're in this situation. This is actually a blessing for you." And that's the whole point. That moment of struggle isn't some terrible thing to be avoided. It's the only chance you get to actually practice a new mental skill. The difficult moment is the gym. Which brings us to what might be the most powerful piece of this entire puzzle: detachment from outcomes. This is all about learning to separate the work you put in from your emotional attachment to getting a specific result. A perfect example of this is the story of two groups of Olympic archers. You had the American archers, who were completely obsessed with the outcome, hitting that bullseye. And what did that get them? A ton of anxiety and self-judgment. But then you had the Asian archers. Their goal was different. Their goal was the process, a perfect draw, a perfect release. But bullseye, that was just a side effect, something the arrow did if the process was right. And that detachment from the result is exactly what gave them their incredible power and consistency. So where does all of this lead? Well, it leads us to the final transformation, the whole point of this practice. It's about making the shift from being a puppet to becoming a gatekeeper. Now, the puppet, that's the default state for most people, right? We're just being yanked around by the strings of our subconscious programming. Something happens, a string gets pulled, and we have an automatic emotional reaction. We're not choosing, we're just reacting. But the gatekeeper, that's the empowered state. As the gatekeeper, you're standing at the front door of your mind. You watch thoughts as they come up the walkway, and you get to consciously decide. You can come in, you can leave. You are finally, truly in charge. So let's recap the path to get there. First, you've got to develop that awareness that you are not your thoughts. Second, start seeing every single challenge not as a problem, but as practice. Third, let go of your obsession with the outcome and learn to love the process. And finally, never forget that you always have the power to choose how you interpret what happens to you. When you boil it all down, it really comes to this. Your thoughts can be incredible servants, or they can be absolutely brutal masters. So after all this, the only question left is, who are you going to put in charge?